Awesome. Okay. And if you just want to post in the chat where you're located, what interests you about B Corp, you can share your LinkedIn if you prefer. And we'll get started in 1 minute. So I am Eliza Erskine. I'm the founder of Green Buoy, and I'm one of the hosts of this event. Hi, RM. Hi, Douglas. Welcome, welcome. Okay, and just a note, we are recording this. So if you don't want to be on camera, this is your warning. So I think we should get started just in the interest of time. Just some kind of disclosures. We neither one of us are affiliated with B Corp. We just work with companies on the certification. So Naman, if you could go to the first slide, we'll do some intros. Then we're going to do an overview, and then we'll leave time at the ends for questions and discussions. We've done this webinar a couple times, and it usually is between 30 to 40 minutes. So just to give everyone that notice. So if you could go to the next slide, please. Naman, you want to introduce yourself first, then I'll go.
Sure, I'll go ahead. Hey everyone, thanks for joining in today. My name is Naman. I stay in Toronto, Canada. I run a video podcast platform called Epic, where I cover stories of impactful startups, some startups who are doing something for the people and the planet. I also run a weekly newsletter where I cover a problem plaguing our planet every week and 3 startups across the globe who are solving it in their own unique way. So that's called Not My Problem. We'll be putting links to all of that in the chat. And yeah, thanks again for joining us today.
Awesome. And I am Eliza. I'm the founder of Green Buoy Consulting, and we provide sustainability consulting, strategy, reporting, and B Corp certification to small and medium-sized businesses. B Corp certification takes companies, we work with them anywhere from a long-term engagement going through the whole process with them to, single sessions that are 90 minutes going through their assessment and helping them tackle the problems. So Naman and I have been partnering with these events for a couple months. And part of what we're really interested in and focusing on is figuring out the best way to help companies that are interested in this. The B Corp assessment is time intensive. It's kind of learning intensive. It can take a long time. So we're trying to figure out the best way to help companies. And one of those ways is through this webinar. So let's get started and talk about what B Corp is. So B Corp is a certification given by a group called B Lab, and B Corp certification means you have passed B Lab's criteria for B Corp certification and are approved as a company that incorporates people, planet, and profit into your business structure. So to be certified, B Corp companies have to fill out an online assessment. They have to change their legal standing to benefit corporation, and they have to pay a fee to get certified. So I think a good way to help explain certification is to look at companies that are certified. So Patagonia, Allbirds, Eileen Fisher, Clean Canteen, these are all companies that are certified as B Corp. And certification is open to any type of for-profit business, whether you are product or service based. And B Corp looks at your business in these 5 main areas: workers, environment, community, customers, and governance. That's part of the kind of triple bottom line approach, that you're putting equal weight into these areas. And we'll get into more of what each of these areas mean as we go through. So next slide, please. Thank you. So why do companies get certified? This is something that's kind of individual to each company. but most companies look at B Corp as kind of a stamp of approval of their values and the actions that they're taking to support the planet. So especially for companies that are growing, that don't have a full sustainability team, but are taking action on sustainability, the certification process is a great way to kind of cement those practices and prove to the world that you're taking action. So there's a ton of statistics on how B Corps grow faster. They have better customer retention. They performed better during the pandemic. So these are quotes from B Corp companies just talking about how it's helped them with recruiting. I think that's a really powerful indicator for a lot of companies. Employees, especially millennials and younger employees, want to work at B Corps. Patagonia has also talked about how it's helped them with recruiting. And then also for just partnerships and working with suppliers, it really is a kind of seal that proves to other companies that you want to partner with or supply from, that you're making these explicit commitments in those areas. So let's talk about the certification process. So to get certified, you have to complete the B Corp impact assessment. Depending on your industry, it's about 100 questions in those 5 areas that we talked about earlier: workers, environment, governance, community, and customers. And each of those questions is scored. It has a weighted score, and you have to have a score of 80 or higher to get certified. Each question is weighted differently. Each question has requires proof and documentation to show that what you're answering is actually what you're doing. So once you have enough points to apply, you finish the assessment, you're at 80 or above, you meet with B Lab. And B Lab, again, is that governing body that approves people for certification. You have a meeting with them, you go through your assessment with them, you talk about what you're doing, they check everything. And then once you're approved, then you have to make that legal change to become a benefit corporation. That can vary state to state, country to country, and people usually do that with a lawyer. And then you pay your fee to B Corp and you're approved. So that's sort of a look at the certification process as a whole. Let's look next at completing the assessment. This is really the kind of meat and potatoes of what we're going to talk about today, is the assessment. I think this is where a lot of companies get overwhelmed and kind of get tripped up. So I'm going to go through how to go through it, and we'll talk about what it looks like to complete it. So the assessment is based on your business type. So if you're a service-based business, it will ask you different questions than product-based business. But it does cover those 5 areas. It's an online platform, it's free, and you go through question by question, answering questions, providing data. Points are weighted differently based on your industry and the type of business that you have. So a product-based business is going to be weighted more heavily in suppliers and manufacturing and waste than a service-based business, for example. You do need a minimum of 80 points to get certified. As you're going through the assessment, you'll be able to see how many points you have, how many questions you've completed. The assessment is very robust. It has kind of different definitions in each part. And if you read something and you're like, I'm not really sure what this is, there's FAQs and there's explainers for each question. There is a minimum of 80 points to be certified. However, I recommend applying at above 80. Usually companies I found are most effective at applying at 85 or above. The reason I say that is when you meet with B Lab, you have to show proof and go through all your documentation, and just naturally some of the things they'll look at and say, okay, that's not quite up to our standard, or this isn't quite what this is. So it just helps, I think, to have, I call them just buffer points, to be able to go in really confidently to that meeting with B Corp and be able to come out of that meeting with above 80 points. So the assessment, it's free. You can take as much time as you want, which I think is both good and bad, because people start it and then, other priorities kind of come up. So next, we're going to go through common questions that I get about the assessment. So the first question, by far and away, the most common question is, how long will it take? The answer is, it totally depends on your business. I know that's not very helpful, but when you're thinking about timing and you're trying to time it, I recommend thinking about it sort of two main factors. How much do you have documented already? And how much, resources and time do you have to allocate to this? So are there, how much you have documented? Do you have policies in place? Or are you using the assessment as, okay, I'm going to go through and then I'm going to have to take time to write all of these policies and kind of make changes to get the points that I need? And then when I talk about resources to allocate, that could be other people on your team helping you do it. How much time do you have in your day to spend time on this? There's no average for time to complete, because it depends on your company. This definitely is not something that is going to be done in an afternoon. It definitely takes multiple hours to kind of go through, even if you have everything documented, to go through the assessment and kind of put the documents in the right place and check everything and go back. And if you have a team, I do recommend using them. It's just always helpful to have another set of eyeballs and other people to look at this and say, okay, our company is actually doing this, or yes, I do think about this same question that way. Just to have more information that way. The other timing question to keep in mind is B Corp during COVID, and still they have had a 30% increase in applications. So the time to complete the assessment is one thing. The time to kind of go through the whole certification process is another. So B Corp right now has about a 5 to 8 week queue of applicants. So once you submit your assessment, you're still going to be in kind of a holding pattern while you wait for them. And then on their end, they take time to review. They send you some back and forth questions. So once you have submitted, if you're on, I know, companies set goals for, we're going to get certified in 2021. If you want to be done with this and certified by the end of 2021, I recommend applying with kind of 4 months on B Corp's end, just to be safe, to go back and forth with them. If you do have your meeting and you have to add more points, it just helps, I think, to have that kind of time buffer. So the second question is some version of, my company doesn't do a lot of environmental activities, or I don't have a lot to show in one area. That's fine. I recommend that companies, lean into areas that you do have and that you are strong in. B Corp does look at employees and customers and environmental activities. And if you're really strong in employee benefits and employee engagement, those things will help your assessment. And again, based on your industry, the areas that you're strong in will be relevant to your industry, and the assessment is tailored to that too. So if you're a service-based company, don't get too worked up about environmental things, because the assessment is going to lean heavily on other areas. And then as you're going through and looking at trying to get points and trying to allocate points, you can check and see within the assessment, okay, if we increase this, how much would our points increase? The assessment itself is very transparent, and you can see what points are available, what point each question is worth. So you can kind of play around and see, oh, if we did, implement this policy, how would this change? And if we did this, this is how our score would change. So I think some of that is fun to do. Companies, that's just kind of your interest. But I would say what you're interested in, what you're excited about in the assessment, go all in on that. And then the other question and thing to keep in mind is, how much does it cost? This is another common question. B-Lab has a list of pricing on their website. Pricing is based on revenue. So I believe it's about $1,000 annually to be certified if your revenue is under $150,000. And then it goes up from there. The assessment is free to do. It's just the fee to get certified. Other companies, it costs money to have a lawyer, do your legal changes. Those types of things are just other costs to keep in mind. But because pricing is based on revenue, if you're thinking about it and you're a growing business, it definitely benefits you on the pricing side to get certified when your revenue is lower, because it will be cheaper. So those are some common questions. I'll have time for questions at the end, and we can talk more about if other people have questions. So these are my kind of tips and tricks and things that you should just keep in mind when you're doing the assessment, if you're thinking about the assessment. So the first one is that I like to say that B Corp is transparent and also private. So by that, I mean that no one knows if you started the assessment, but all the points and point values are transparent. So like I said earlier, you can go in as you're in the assessment and say, okay, well, if I did this question, how many points would I have? And the point system is transparent. So that part is helpful if you're going through and are trying to get to a certain point goal or those types of things as you're going through. The second thing to keep in mind, B-Lab is busy, it's growing, but they really want to help. They're clearly passionate about getting people into this movement, getting people certified. So they want companies to be certified, and they want to help you do that. So when you sign up for the assessment, you'll get emails from them. You can schedule office hours and talk to somebody on their end that works in the assessment. They have email support and different FAQs. So I recommend that companies, take advantage of those resources and the people at B-Lab. It's usually just kind of a faster way, again, to get through if you have a question on something or just want to talk to somebody, especially for a solo founder. If you're sort of overwhelmed, I find it can be helpful to have someone else to, talk through things and say, I'm looking at this or this. So I recommend using B-Lab. And then we talked a little bit about this earlier, but really use your company structure and culture when you're filling out the assessment. So if your employee benefits and engagement are really strong, use that as your kind of way to build points. Use your team in the assessment process. Use it as a goal setting tool. If your company culture is, one that sets goals and has different kind of meeting structures in place, if you can add the assessment into that, it will be easier to complete. And the other thing to keep in mind, this is kind of a double-edged sword, but time is on your side. There's no time requirement for this, so this is good and bad. But once you start, you can come back to it and go at your own pace. Anyone can start the assessment, and you can spend as much time on the assessment as you want. And you can mark things and make comments and add notes. So the assessment you can really kind of make your own. So because anyone can start the assessment, if you're thinking about B Corp, I recommend that you go in and start it and look at it just to get familiar with it, and you can kind of check and see what it looks like, and how it will be for your company. So I don't think you have a lot to lose. That's just my opinion. I'm going to start it. So next, resources. Last time I tried to put these into the chat, the websites didn't work, but the B Corp website is excellent. If you go in the assessment, they have different FAQs. You can check out the legal requirements by state, by country. And that's just kind of another way to get more information about what certification entails. I will send out an email with all this so you have it, but it's pretty easy. I think you just Google B Lab or B Corp assessment. B Impact assessment is the B Corp one. So our next slide is questions and discussion. So if you have a question, you can put it in the chat. We're a small enough group. You can also unmute yourself and we can talk through. Has anybody started the assessment or wants to share kind of what their interest in B Corp is, or go ahead, Beth.
Yeah, I can go. I started it quite a while ago, just to kind of get a litmus test of what does it look like, where am I at, what kind of things do they ask, and I was equally excited and overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And it's been something I've been reading. Like, I knew I wanted to have a B Corp before I knew what my business was going to be. So it's like this driving force. And now I'm one of those people within the year, like, I want to end December 2021 with B Corp certification. And so now I'm at that point where, what are my resources? I think I need help doing this because it's just so big, and
Yeah.
I've got other work to do, like, how do you fit that all in when we're super small and super new? And so now I'm trying to figure out what's the best next step. Because I think that if I had the capacity myself to have gone through it and made steady progress on it on my own, I would be further along the process than I am.
Right.
So,
yeah, it would have happened already.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Okay, that's great to know. Do you think so? Time is your main enemy, not enemy, but
I'm one of those. I actually have some time to devote to it. And that's in flux, right? Who knows?
Yeah,
if I'll have
exactly.
time to vote for it in March or whatnot. Right now, I'm finding myself. I'll get into the zone. I've like set aside like a certain day of the week where I go in and I try to literally put the policies in place.
Right.
That shows where I need to document, improve, think about, and I like get on a good roll, and then a big project will come in and I'll be like, and then I'll come back to it and it'll take me another, little bit to kind of get into it. And so I find myself in fits and starts.
Yeah.
And that's annoying myself. And so I'm like, okay, how can I find that team, create it, ask for help in a way that weekly, monthly, I'm seeing progress. And so it actually comes to fruition. Because it is so overwhelming. Like, I'll go into like one section of it and I'll be like, well, this and this and this and this. And then it'll be 3 hours later and I'll be like, I don't know what I've done, if it's working or not.
Yeah. Do you have a team?
Not in a legitimate sense of the word. I have someone who's like, I will pay your fee. I have someone else who's like, if you give me something specific to do, I can help you with it. But that's pretty much the extent of it. It's me not only having to do it, but also spearhead it. And there's so much to do with it. I'm finding it like, build your business and get B certification. Yeah. It's hard to separate the two, but also keep both on a steady path. So I've moved into like, okay, so what outside resources would make sense for me? Mm-hmm. Because it is a priority. And so what are my options then? Because clearly me sitting at my desk alone is not going to make this goal, you know, I want it to come true.
Right.
I'll
Yeah.
work towards it come true, but I could, I said that last year and it
Yeah.
didn't.
Well, I can talk about kind of how we help.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So the first way is, I call it a B Corp strategy session. Okay, bye RM, good to see you. Thanks for coming. So the B Corp strategy session is, we sit down for 90 minutes. You upload your assessment, and I spend time going through before and say, okay, this is what you do to maximize points. This is what you do for this. Focus on these areas. Here, it's sort of like you end with a roadmap. We meet for 90 minutes so that you can go through and say, this is a struggle, and this is this, and this is what I want to talk about. And then I give you those recommendations, and then I have different policy templates and other things too. I think that just, how do you write a supplier code of like those are, yeah, exactly. So this is at least like a template that you can go through for that. And then the other thing that Naman and I are doing, this is our sort of test idea for January and February, is we call it an 80 for 80 B Corp sprint. So it's 80 minutes of time for people to just say, okay, we're all going to be on Zoom together, kind of like this, but we're all muted, and we're all just working on the assessment. And then if you have a question, I answer it in the chat. I'm going to be working on my own assessment. And then at the end, we separate. So for smaller companies, and then I do I do it for you. You kind of set it and forget it. But I think that the first two sound more up your alley. So that's what we have found to be helpful. The strategy session, I had one in December, and we added like 25 points for her, and got her the templates and surveys, and so yeah, so those are those options.
That sounds really awesome. I'd like to explore those more for sure with y'all.
Okay.
Because I'm also like, my company's only been in existence now for a year. And so some of it is helping me create the first ever policy.
Yes, exactly.
And so I know I need to be like in it, because I can't just be like, oh, here's what we do,
Yeah.
make it submittable. And so I like the dynamic of working with someone on it and having some insight, and but also there's so many cool things to think about. So I'm actually using the B Corp assessment to actually build the business from the ground up.
That's awesome. Yeah. And have you found it to be helpful? Like that part
absolutely.
To sort of like, yeah.
Because it just it pushes me in the direction where I know what I want it to feel like. I can talk about it in general terms, but the specificity I need and the language I need to like convey that and hold myself and others accountable. And the various ways to think about it, right? We can think about in each of the 5 ones, you're like, oh yes, of course, who doesn't want that?
Right, yeah.
But it really breaks it down and be like, what does that really look like in business? As opposed to like the bumper sticker of, save the planet. But what does that really look like?
Yeah, and acting out the policies and, living that on, kind of a day-to-day.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I'll send you that information.
Okay, that would be
do
great.
Yeah, like a wrap up email. But how did you hear about the webinar?
I don't remember.
Just came.
Yeah,
That's great.
I've been plugged into the B Corp community for like about 2 years now.
Okay.
And how I found like the person who did my website, and how I found, and like when I have to purchase things, like I go through like the B Corp list, and I hop on to various, on the kickoff for the net zero. And so I've met a lot of cool people that way. And so whatever listserv I've signed up for along the B Corp world.
Oh, okay.
And so I don't know. I was like, oh yeah, that sounds good.
And in New Orleans, do you have a Be Local community there?
Not that I know of.
Well, you should start one.
Yes, that would be phenomenal because I know it happens, and I know there's a lot of even like there's companies and organizations who are even working towards sustainable Mardi Gras throws. And so like in all aspects of our unique world down here, you know, and there's an organization like the city of New Orleans doesn't recycle glass, and for a city who is so disposes so many glass bottles for cocktails and whatnot.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's scary, actually.
Is it ridiculous? And so actually out of Tulane University, some students, I don't know if they've graduated or not, actually started a company where you can go and recycle all your glass. And then they turn that into different products that people can then use to like prevent, you know, like for sandbags, for like flooding. And so it's like a nice regenerative model that they have. And so there's always like cute, cool little pockets that I'm finding that I think, you know, it's happening. I don't think it's formally like, we don't formally meet or anything, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's exciting. That's awesome.
Yeah. But I would love to like that be part of our, you know, roadmap of how do we make this a community thing as opposed to this is just something I've always wanted to do.
Yeah. It's much more fun to be connected and plugged in with other people that are doing that and thinking about that. And it's a good way to learn.
Yeah. So this has been super exciting. I feel better already.
I'm so glad. That's awesome.
Yeah. I'm super excited to like next steps.
Okay, great. Oh, there's Doug. Okay. Well, I will send you that.
Okay.
Connect with us on LinkedIn. If any other questions come up in the meantime, let us know.
I certainly will. Thank you both so
You're so welcome. Thanks for coming.
All right. And I will talk to you guys soon.
Okay. Talk to you soon. Bye, Beth.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.